All right. Let's see if we can do this on the one Sunday night that anybody might actually be listening, because it's still 1 week away from Game of Thrones, and man, I really wish there was a book out. But until then, it is Sunday, April 17th, 2016.
This is not a test.
This is the Wrestling News Experience. After Dark. I'm not really worried, but it is one of those things. Good evening. Welcome to Wrestling News Experience After Dark. I am Stephen Randle on a special Sunday night broadcast, which most of you won't know because nobody listens to this live except a select handful of loyal viewers. Listeners, whatever. Of course, if you don't happen to listen to live, you can also join us on the TWNE After Dark Facebook group. You can follow me on Twitter at Dave the Camel, and this podcast is available. Here we go. On Spreaker.com, 411mania.com, iTunes, Stitcher, and through the Wrestling to the Max podcast network. That's Wrestling with the numeral 2, the Max podcast network. Didn't think that we'd have a lot of news this week because WWE is off in the United Kingdom and Europe, and usually nothing happens of interest out there. I mean, obviously this week Raw and SmackDown will be taped out there. You'll get spoilers for Raw before it happens, which will make my job easier. But stuff has happened. Not huge stuff. Stuff has happened after Bray Wyatt finally got back on track somewhat. Even got a win on Raw this week. Word came out from the European tour that Bray Wyatt injured his calf muscle. WWE.com confirmed the injury. He's been sent home from the tour. He won't be out there. Obviously, just a tremendous blow to a guy who looked like he was finally getting back on track. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if he took a couple months off. Just because he did a face turn doesn't mean we can't have them wait a couple months and reboot it. But obviously, there's just another name in a list of people we can't use right now. John Cena's not available for a couple more months. Seth Rollins isn't probably available till SummerSlam. We haven't heard anything about Randy Orton. It keeps getting worse. And then we added 2 more names this weekend. Not from injury, but yes, it does make. It's odd that we haven't heard anything after they confirmed the injury, because we haven't heard anything about Luke Harper's actual injury. But the fact that WWE.com confirmed the calf injury is unnerving. They haven't said anything else. They've just confirmed he suffered an injury. So we're in the NHL playoffs right now. This is the upper body injury, or lower body in this case, the lower body injury of the NHL playoffs, where they don't tell you anything about how anybody is hurt. But they are forced to acknowledge that he is hurt. The only good news to come out of that is that the other 2 people we were hurt all week was AJ Styles at the SmackDown taping, took a pretty nasty bump, but he's fine. And there was one other. Somebody was selling like crazy on Raw, and just actually selling. And this is the point where we've reached where people. Oh, Cesaro with his shoulder. People selling well. We've started to become worried that they actually might be hurt. And while that is testament to people doing a good job of selling, we're in this stage where we're looking for everyone to suddenly go down with whatever injury. And it's a nervous time, and I'm not sure I like it. But to get back to the point is, in addition to Wyatt, who we don't know how long he'll be out, we don't know if he'll be out. Maybe it was just a thing. Maybe they just didn't want to diagnose it over in Europe and give him the week off and hope he'll be ready for the week after that. He can cut a live via satellite promo while they're in the UK. But in addition to that, for an injury, we had 2 wellness suspensions from both Connor of the Ascension and uh, Adam Rose of the Social Outcast, both suspended 60 days, second violation. And the reason it's their second violation, which is interesting to me, is that Connor's first wellness violation happened 10 years ago. More than 10 years. 2005. He wasn't even under the name Connor at that point. When he was in developmental, he violated. So if you wondered how long strikes last in the wellness policy, it's forever. Now, apparently, I seem to recall that there was a way to get rid of strikes through extensive rehab and counseling and all that. And maybe we just don't hear about that. But it is odd to me that these are the first two wellness violations we've heard of in... When was the last one? I don't even remember anymore when the last time somebody got actually suspended for wellness violations. I feel like I should, though. I feel like there was one really, like, within the last year. But remember when they installed the policy and, like, so many people were getting wellness violations, they almost ruined an entire pay-per-view because of it? Well, that doesn't happen anymore. And it's kind of like the NHL's wellness policy. I hate to go back to hockey, but it is playoff time. One person has been suspended by wellness violations in the entire, and it's been around as long as the WWE one has been. And to me, that says to me not that the wellness policy is preventing it, but that they're just not looking. And you can get rid of strikes because Randy Orton hasn't been fired yet. But maybe if you're somebody like a member of the Ascension, you get your 60-day suspension. Victor's, the Ascension was already screwed, is further screwed, because I don't think you come back from this. The Social Outcast, I mean, they're pretty interchangeable as jobbers. You could put, maybe this is Damien Sandow's chance. Yes, I agree from the chat. Maybe this is Damien Sandow's chance to get a real paycheck again, be the new fourth member of the Social Outcast, make it an angle where he spends a few weeks trying to get in. I don't know. Zack Ryder would be an option, but I don't think that they're going to... I think he's back in the hype bros now. Whether you like that or not, I guess it depends on you. But, the Social Outcasts, it's not like they were a big, meaningful team, and the Ascension were jobbers. And in this new era where we have like 16 other tag teams, I don't think the Ascension really mattered anyway. They were between the Vaudevillains and Enzo and Cass. Plus, you've got the Dudleys and the Usos, and the Lucha Dragons, and there's a few more. And plus, of course, on Raw, the debut of Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows. This is the worst possible time for somebody to essentially get, not that there's a good time, but to get a wellness suspension right when the tag team division is becoming a real thing again. I mean, they're just going to get fired. There's plenty of talent where they came from. And the Social Outcasts, like Adam Rose is on his 15th chance, so I don't know. If this doesn't do it, I don't know. They're pretty much, again, like the Ascension, they're a group where if they drop a member, it's not like WWE's going to spend a lot of time giving them another one. Or carrying that they're down to 3 instead of 4. It's the same thing as like the League of Nations, which will break up eventually, and apparently pretty quickly. They didn't care about taking one guy out, even though he just got a t-shirt a few weeks ago. They're not important enough for creative to care that one of them got suspended for 60 days. The Ascension is even less important, but like I said, they're not even getting TV time. At least the Outcasts were getting TV time. The Ascension's stuff right now has been, their most recent thing was they did the job to Enzo and Cass in the tag team tournament, as we knew they would. So I don't want to say both those guys' careers are over, but man, this was a bad time for that. So you won't probably see anything. Like, I think it would be interesting if they did something where they tried to get somebody else in the Social Outcast, and boy, are they going to have to reprint a bunch of T-shirts. But I suspect that they'll just ignore it, and then 60 days later, Adam Rose may or may not reappear as part of the Social Outcast. I don't know. He, while weird, never seemed to fit into the same vibe as the rest of the Social Outcast. Maybe that's just me. reading too much into a low card stable, but all I'm asking is for some uniformity. Is that so much? I don't know. What else did we have from the European? Oh, the Undertaker got taken off the European tour, and originally it was reported he was gone from all of them, and then it was reported he was gone from all but two, and now he's just completely gone from those. Speculation, of course, is that he's retired, which is incredibly unlikely. Even if he doesn't wrestle again for the rest of the year, which I find very likely, we're back in the situation like other previous WrestleMania. We have to remember that the last year where he wrestled a bunch of times, like at SummerSlam and Hell in a Cell and Survivor Series, was the most he's worked outside of WrestleMania in years. He comes in to work WrestleMania and goes away because he needs to recover from WrestleMania, and I suspect that is what's going on here. There's no way, if they have to drive him out to the ring in a hearse for WrestleMania 33 so he can face John Cena and we can finally do that and maybe then he'll leave. But he's not going out with his final match being an underwhelming Hell in a Cell match with Shane McMahon, in which the stipulation never mattered because Shane McMahon ended up with control of Raw for the next 2 weeks anyway. They will do, Undertaker will face somebody in a match, and it will almost certainly be John Cena, unless one of them is seriously injured at WrestleMania 33. And then, yes, he's likely done unless WrestleMania 34 is back in Texas, which don't put it past them. But yes, that there is at least one more Undertaker match now. He's just not going on the European tour because he has to recover from the fact that he's a 51-year-old man who wrestled a Hell in a Cell match. As safe and as low impact as it actually was, because let's face it, he was facing Shane McMahon. He's 51. He doesn't really want to go across to Europe and put on appearances and maybe wrestle some matches because he doesn't have to anymore. It was nice when they could advertise, but all he has to say is, you know what, I'm not feeling it anymore, and guess what? The UK gets Kane. No wonder they hate America. Do they hate America? I don't know. I'm Canadian. I assume everybody hates America. Have you read the news? But given that the plan for this year originally it was Taker versus Lesnar, but they moved that up. But since the original plan for WrestleMania was The Undertaker versus John Cena, they are going to do that match at some point. And The Undertaker will probably win. But it will be as early as WrestleMania 33. And I would be incredibly surprised if The Undertaker doesn't wrestle WrestleMania 33. Yes, The Undertaker being pulled off is probably why Triple H is now wrestling on the European tour. Because I would assume that the plan was never for that to happen. Because, as far as I can tell, although they are advertising him for Raw, that might just be because The Undertaker is not there anymore. As far as I can tell, the Authority was supposed to quietly fade away after WrestleMania. But it looks like we're getting the Authority will be on Raw and Shane McMahon will be on Raw, and at some point we will figure this all out, and maybe it will be as good as the last couple weeks of Raw. Maybe it'll be better. I don't know. UK shows don't tend to have a lot of stuff moving forward. What's the next? The pay-per-view is now Payback. It was Extreme Rules. It was Backlash. Now it's Payback. Why didn't we just keep it as Backlash, I ask. I miss those giant hooks on the sets. How many weeks do we have till Payback? We know what the main event is. It's AJ Styles versus Roman Reigns. But, how is that? Sorry, I'm on WWE.com, and of course they've got weird graphics everywhere. And things don't load as fast because I'm doing a podcast. I'm sure all the clicking is really annoying too. Oh, I have a cheap mouse. What do you want? There's Raw, SmackDown, Total Divas, NXT, Wrestling. Where the hell is Payback? Sunday at 8. Not this Sunday. Okay. Sunday, May 1st. Oh. They got a whole month. So that means we have... Oh, 2 more Raws and 2 more SmackDowns. Okay. Wow, it's late in April for me. May 1st. Okay, thank you. May 1st, then Extreme Rules 3 weeks later. Oy. So that's a nice compressed schedule. I bet Extreme Rules will show a lot of rematches for Payback. What do you want to think? I'm wrong. There is more than one match. We got Cesaro versus The Miz, which great. And Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn will probably try to kill each other at some point. And the tag titles will be on the line of New Day and whoever wins the tournament. Actually, the card looks better than WrestleMania already. Am I wrong? Yeah, so Payback is May 1st. We've got this week of Raw and SmackDown from the UK, and then next week's Raw and SmackDown, and then we're in Payback. And doesn't it just seem like WrestleMania just happened, possibly because it did just happen? Yeah, the Payback card looks great. I was just reading it off, and I'm like, well, Roman Reigns versus AJ Styles should be good for one way or another. Miz versus Cesaro. I mean, Miz and Maurice are killing this new Hollywood power couple gimmick, and Cesaro is just killing it in general. And there's that. Whoever the New Day faces, what are the 4 teams left? It's Enzo and Cass, the Dudleys, the Usos, and sorry, you didn't see the face I just made. The Usos and the Vaudevillains. That's the 4th team. Call me crazy, but I don't know if it shakes out that way because I feel like they wouldn't have introduced Anderson and Gallows if there wasn't an ultimate plan, which is going to get them the tag titles. I mean, of those 4 tag teams, I want it to be Enzo and Cass because that would be cool, but it'd be kind of awkward too because the New Day are new faces and Enzo and Cass are credit faces. I just feel like that attack on the Usos, the debut of Gallows and Anderson, just says to me that they're going to come in and take the titles in their first pay-per-view match. I don't know, obviously, if there's a plan or not or whatever, but of those 4 teams that are left, because I feel like the Enzo and Cass thing ends up being a separate match, like the Enzo and Cass versus the Dudleys ends up being a different match at Payback or maybe Extreme Rules, like they get trapped in their own feud or something. I don't want to see the Usos against the New Day, and the Vaudevillains are not a team that's going to get a title shot right away. I don't think Enzo and Cass should face the New Day, and I don't think that the Dudley Boys should beat Enzo and Cass. So I'm not sure what ends up happening there. I suspect. Yeah, that's not a bad idea from the chat. Is that they would have Usos win the tournament, and have Anderson and Gallows challenge them for the shot, then beat the New Day at Payback. Can we do that in 2 weeks? Because we have this round's on Raw, and then the finals will be the next week. I guess you could. I just feel like Anderson and Gallows are going to try and actually physically take the Usos' place in the tournament. Maybe after they beat the Vaudevillains, I don't know. And then they'll face probably Enzo and Cass in the finals, beat them, and then beat the New Day, and it'll just be like. There's part of me, I don't know. Like, there's that ridiculous part of me that thinks this is all a setup for something. It's not a coincidence that Anderson and Gallows are debuting and might have a chance at Tag Team Gold, the same pay-per-view that AJ Styles, former Bullet Club member, will have a chance at the World Heavyweight title. It can't be a coincidence that there's a chance for 3 Bullet Club guys to end up with titles at the end of the night. Whether as good guys or bad guys, I don't know. They beat up the Usos, so WWE probably thinks they're good guys, but they beat up the Usos, so they're good guys. I don't know. I suspect we will know a lot more after this Raw, but I would like to see it Anderson and Gallows versus the New Day. Given the 4 teams we have left and the scenarios I've run through, I don't know if they'll do the finals on SmackDown, though. I think like the finals of a tag team tournament or something they would put on Raw, but maybe I'm wrong. They have been making SmackDown slightly more important recently. More interesting stuff is happening there, although not necessarily huge storyline progression. I feel like they'd put the finals on Raw. That's just me. Which is why it's kind of odd they're doing both semifinals on Raw. I figured they'd do one on Raw, one on SmackDown. But, Yeah, of the 4 teams left, I don't really want to see any of them face a New Day yet. I mean, obviously Enzo and Cass, but I think it's too early to suddenly shoot them into a title match. Though they are over enough to deserve it, I don't think there's a story yet there, especially if you're going to go face New Day and Enzo and Cass. That leaves you the heel teams of the Vaudevillains, who aren't really heels and have just debuted, and the Dudleys, who shouldn't be. What do you want to see the Dudleys in the New Day again? Because I don't particularly want to see that again. Really, Anderson and Gallows somehow ending up with the title shot is the only thing that makes sense to me. I mean, WrestleMania showed what I think makes sense means nothing. So bet with me at your own risk. But that's what I would see. Other matches we'll see on the card. Like I said, I assume we're headed towards something with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, whether it will be a match or just them beating the shit out of each other. That will be likely. I would suspect we will see a women's title match between Charlotte and Natalya, almost certainly. They'll probably throw in another women's match just to make it, just to have more women's matches. Ambrose versus Jericho, yes. Holy crap, this Payback card sounds so much better than WrestleMania. Ambrose versus Jericho, which started, and I like, people are all like, oh, Dean Ambrose shouldn't be this comedic. I'm like, that was the most relaxed, most natural sounding. Like, Dean Ambrose is magic on that microphone, and Enzo is great too. They're different styles. But when Dean Ambrose came out and did this whole thing and Chris Jericho was selling the whole thing perfectly. But when Dean Ambrose came out and took over the show, and this whole bits with like his parking ticket, and he's got a new plant and stuff like that, it was comedy, but it was perfectly done. Like, it was actually funny comedy. And it worked, and it's a lot of it's mind games. It's like, it's comedy, but Dean Ambrose is clearly just screwing with Chris Jericho to get him off his game. It's not the comedy of spraying people with ketchup and mustard, which I also thought was okay. But I think it's a good thing, and Jericho's the kind of guy who knows how to sell a feud on the mic, and Dean Ambrose knows how to sell a feud on the mic, and together it's going to be pretty good. And the wrestling will be okay. Jericho won't have to keep up someone at the level of an AJ Styles. And Dean Ambrose wrestles more of a ground game, which Jericho can easily keep up with. And hey, Dean Ambrose might end up with a victory. Who knows? There's always that chance. It is Chris Jericho. Although he did beat AJ Styles at WrestleMania. Which still, despite everything that has happened to AJ Styles since WrestleMania, Chris Jericho winning at WrestleMania still does not make any sense. It will haunt me. Probably forever, because I see no reason why Chris Jericho had to win that match. But that's my own little thing. So, yes, for the women's title, it looks like Sasha won't see a title shot in the summer, which I'm fine with. I wish they hadn't kind of so ham-handedly put Natalya into the feud. But the way I looked at it is we've had Charlotte, Becky, and Sasha wrestling with each other, and they've been involved together for a long time, basically since the Divas Revolution started, which I'm surprised they still call it that, because the Divas is gone now. But by splitting up, we've got, right now, Sasha's not really feuding with anyone, but we have Charlotte facing Natalya, we have Becky feuding with Emma. You've got all your great women up there, but rather than keep facing them off against each other and bringing the people out on what will admittedly be great matches, but you can only do them so many times in a row, you've now split them all up to have good to great matches with other women in the division. And it's not like Emma is a slouch, or Natalya. They're not slouches in the ring either. So you've made the division deeper by spreading out your figureheads of it to have separate feuds. Because it can't be Charlotte versus Becky versus Sasha forever, and it doesn't look like Bayley's coming up until at least after the next NXT Live special, which is 2 months away. So you're giving yourself options for better feuds, because it's never going to get better if you just have this. Like, even though it's good now, you want it to get better and be sustainable, and that means you can't just rely on those 3 women to do everything. You need to, like, there's an entire division full of actually competent women's wrestlers that needs to be rebuilt. There's Emma and Natalya and Paige and Summer Rae, and they're all incredibly competent wrestlers, but they've been treated so shoddily. You need to spend some time rebuilding them so your division looks like it has more than just the 3 people on top. And I'm not saying even that they lose the feuds. I'm not saying that Becky loses to Emma or that Sasha loses to her over a few feuds or that Charlotte loses to Natalya, which clearly isn't going to happen. I'm saying they need to get out there and show that some of them are just as good of wrestlers as Charlotte and Sasha and Becky, and that they can hang with them on that level so that the crowd will buy them at the level. Because at this point, the crowd only basically buys those 3 women as the competent ones, plus a couple of them down in NXT, but on Raw in general. So you need to show off that despite the fact that Natalya has basically been treated like a joke on Total Divas and the mom of the division and somebody who loses a lot, she's still a heart. She wrestled in that dungeon. She knows how to wrestle. You need to show that Summer Rae in NXT used to be Sasha's superior and actually taught her everything she knows. You need to show that Emma is actually one of the best wrestlers to come out of Australia. Sorry, Swartina. And then you've got more than just, we got to do some iteration of Charlotte, Becky, and Sasha again, which will be great, but you can't burn through it in the first 3 months of there being a new women's division. And yes, I don't see Bayley coming up at this point. She's definitely getting a rematch with Asuka at the next TakeOver. I don't see her coming up until at least after that, and probably you're right. Now, probably not either till after SummerSlam or the build to SummerSlam. It will be one or the other. Because you don't need to bring her up right now. Honestly, as much as I've been singing the praises, and as much as I'd like to have her on the main roster, getting her due up there, right now she'd almost get lost in the shuffle. Because again, you're not going to bring her up, and after all the work you put into Charlotte, you're not going to immediately have Bayley win that title. But Bayley's going to come up with such fanfare that you're going to want the title on her immediately. And right now, it's better to keep building Charlotte up until eventually Bayley shows up to take her down, or take whoever down, or wrestle more matches with Sasha Banks, which I'm sure nobody would have a problem with. But it's okay. They say that we always want, in wrestling, we always want stuff too fast. There is lots of time for all these women to get the matches that we want them to have. And if it means that Bayley is in the semi-mains of takeovers until then, against Asuka, oh well. I guess we'll have to survive somehow. I mean, I wouldn't complain about that too loudly. But speaking of the next takeover, this is from the chat. Do we think Nakamura faces Baylor, or do we get Baylor versus Joe 3? I don't want to spoil anything from the tapings, and it's not really a big spoiler, but Baylor doesn't show up on the tapings this for the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks, I think. Which is admittedly a short time. At this point, I know about it as much about the next takeover as you do. I would lean strongly towards Baylor versus Joe 3. I think that if Nakamura's stay in NXT is an extended one, and I'm not entirely certain it should be, again, I'm not going to argue about him doing that while they think of something for him to do on the main roster, but I'm trying to think of who Nakamura would feud with over the time. But obviously there will be a takeover in Tokyo, and I think that would be the moment, if you're going to keep Nakamura down there that long, that's the moment where he gets the NXT title. I honestly think it's Baylor Joe 3. I don't know how to justify that, because Joe has lost both matches cleanly. I guess in NXT you don't have to say cleanly, because that's how everybody loses matches. Nakamura could feud with Aries. I mean, there are options. I'm just saying that, yeah, Nakamura could feud with Aries. And there are options. I'm just saying that off the cuff, I can't think of anyone who really needs a feud with Nakamura right now on the NXT roster. Most of that is colored by the fact that he should be above the NXT roster right now. But, like I said, I can't complain about getting to see those great takeovers with him. I think that like I said, I think we're headed to Joe Baylor 3 somehow. Part of that will depend on what happens on the main roster. Because it's one of those things. Like I said before the last takeover, probably the person who doesn't have the belt should head up to the main roster, but it's pretty clear that Joe isn't going to the main roster. And they're making a big deal about the fact Baylor officially, as of this Monday, becomes the longest reigning NXT champion. I'm not sure. It'd be hard story-wise to make Joe versus Baylor 3. Maybe we get Joe versus Nakamura as a number one contenders match of some sort. Because that's what they've been. Apparently, they've done Joe Nakamura a couple times on the live events, and man, am I jealous of the people who got to see that. That could be a way to go. Is maybe Baylor doesn't defend at the next takeover because it's just a Full Sail one. You main event with Nakamura Joe or Bayley Asuka, one or the other, and just you make it a number one contenders match. That would not be a bad way to go. And yeah, and something involving American Alpha, yeah, probably versus the Revival in a rematch. 2 out of 3 falls might be asking a little much, but we'll see. Obviously, that'll be on the card. But yeah, it's a Full Sail one, so they won't do the whole... it's not that it won't be good, but I don't think they'll do the whole... it isn't necessary for the NXT title to be on the line necessarily because... the last one, the Respect one, they did not... The NXT title was stuck in the Dusty Rhodes Classic. Stuff like that. I think you could get away with that. Baylor doesn't even have to wrestle a match. You just do. You do the number one contenders match. You do the women's match. You do a tag match, and you find something else for somebody to do. Like maybe Bobby Roode will be debuting at that point. American Alpha versus Bobby Roode and Austin Aries. Not the worst idea in the world. Yeah, Baylor versus Nakamura in Brooklyn. That wouldn't be the worst idea in the world either. But again, like I said, this a lot depends on what the plans are for the Bullet Club guys, for Baylor himself, for Joe, for Nakamura. Nakamura is the one that's pretty clearly defined. I think they would not have announced a takeover in Japan if the plan wasn't for both Nakamura and Asuka to headline major matches at that takeover. There's no way they do that if with 2 of the biggest stars in Japan, if they're not going to be on that show. And you probably could do Baylor versus Nakamura at that one. Why can't I remember when the Japan show is? They haven't really said anything about it, have they? Other than that it's happening. But yeah, Baylor versus... I guess really an NXT title match with Nakamura should be a Brooklyn or a UK or a... that would be way too far away. Or the WrestleMania weekend one. That's a big, big thing. And not that Nakamura Joe isn't. But, like I said, it is definitely not a lesser takeover, but a less important takeover, in a matter of speaking. So that's what I could see happening there, and that's just off the top of my head. Yeah. So, what else? What else happened? I lost my entire train of thought going off on the NXT train. Not that I mind. NXT is great. And this week we're going to get Enzo and Cass versus American Alpha, so that's good. Yeah, there is this rumor going around. Yeah, I think Baylor. I think that if there was going to be a Bullet Club involving Baylor, he would already be on the roster. I think it's very likely that either they're going to side with AJ or side with Roman Reigns. That rumor's been going around lately, is that Anderson and Gallows are going to side with Roman Reigns, and wouldn't that just make him the biggest heel in the company? Like, it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, because playing with all our expectations like that and just saying, ha ha, this is actually the Bullet Club we're going to make, and AJ Styles gets screwed, and Roman Reigns is suddenly the biggest heel in the world. Like, you're printing money at that point. I don't think it's a bad idea. I would do it. And you don't call it Bullet Club. You don't do what. But if they come out and it's like, oh, Bullet Club is here, and then they turn on AJ Styles and suddenly they're Roman Reigns' flunkies and he's the guy, and WWE stops pretending that he's anything less than a bad guy, I think you've created this great heel. And playing into that is the fact that apparently Vince McMahon is incredibly shocked that AJ Styles is like super popular. Apparently his gear has sold out 5 times on WWE Shop since he debuted, which is incredible. And he's actually competing with Roman Reigns for top spots with Cena gone. We're not surprised. Obviously Vince is surprised, but apparently now he's a huge fan. You can't call them just the Empire because I feel like Disney would have a problem with that. But the Roman Empire, clearly they can do. They already have been. I mean, and of course this is all on the pie in the sky dream that Roman Reigns will actually turn heel, but WWE isn't stupid. And like I said, doing that would be a huge angle that would blow the roof off everything and could probably carry them through at least the summer. You build to an AJ Styles rematch at SummerSlam somehow. Even if it's not for AJ Styles to win, that's a big match. Obviously turning Roman Reigns full heel would solve a lot of the problems people have with him. And they wouldn't cheer him because he's going against AJ Styles. Whether AJ Styles is better as a face or heel, that's for people who care more to debate. But I think it's a smart thing to do. I really do. It's just, and partially because I don't think they're going to put the title on AJ Styles so quickly, which is going to disappoint a lot of people. But if they do it in a service of a bigger angle, I think that a lot of people will be like, we can play along with this. We can be all right with this happening. And I know how much they care about that. But I'm just saying, it would be a huge angle, and they'd be kind of stupid to not at least consider that as a direction to go in. Yeah, Payback's in Chicago. No, the fans will be cheering for somebody named CM Punk, as I recall, and Payback's in Chicago. Was Payback in Chicago last year too? Or was that 2 years ago? Anyway, they're going to Chicago and Boston and New York 5 times a year, and they won't go to Toronto once? I don't know who to be mad at for that, but I'm still mad. And don't tell me Roadblock was good enough, because Roadblock was a house show. Anyway, what else happened? I gotta think here. Let me just do a double check. Oh yeah, Titus O'Neil's suspension is over. I'm sure he'll have a large role coming back. Looks like TNA might actually get sold to somebody. I'm sure you all care about that. I'm not going to whistle because that would be bad over the radio. Okay. That's obviously, big news this week was, TNA's office is getting moved, but that's more LOL TNA stuff. Obviously, they don't have any money, and we knew that. Looks like they might get sold because they have no other choice. They are less a wrestling organization than... Well, they're an independent wrestling organization at this point. They will, at some point, either just become a money sink or disappear. Their chance for relevance is long gone. I feel bad because they have some talented guys, but it's not a wrestling organization that will continue. The other big news this week was the death of Balls Mahoney, former ECW original. He was 44. Obviously, at 44, there's some warning signs, and Balls Mahoney, as an ECW superstar, is one of those guys who took a lot of chair shots to the head. I know he also had a lot of fluctuating weight things. I don't want to speculate on anything, but obviously you don't die at 44 because you're a nice and healthy human being. I have not yet watched Lucha Underground this week because I just got really busy. So, okay, yeah. We'll get Mil Muertes versus Matanza on Lucha Underground. If that happened this week. Did that happen this week or is that coming up? Either way. Right, this week was the trios match between El Dragon Azteca, Rey Mysterio, and Puma against. I should know this. I did pay attention somewhat. 3-man team of people who hated each other. Now I have to think about it. That's gonna bug me for a while. Yeah. From the chat, the Balls Mahoney was a nice guy at the local indie shows he'd been to. Yeah, everything I've heard, it appears he was really well liked in the wrestling industry. So that's Cage. Oh yeah, it's Cage, Johnny Mundo, and Taya. That's right. But no, I didn't catch up on that. I should watch it because I want to see the Rey Mysterio trios team. Yeah. It's not that I don't want to. I obviously want to watch Lucha Underground. I just haven't had time yet this week. We're lucky I had time so far. Anything else? I said some nasty things about the Attitude Era that people called me an idiot for at my day job. I want to be clear. I wrote a thing where I said that there were 10 dumb things with the Attitude Era that I don't miss, and there are. I'm not the only person to have said that if you go back and watch Attitude Era matches today, if you try to watch Raws from that era, and they're on the network now, it is a painful slog. I mean, a lot of things got papered over by the fact that Steve Austin and The Rock and Mick Foley and D-Generation X and all that were running around at the top of the card having great pay-per-view matches. Like, the undercards of pay-per-views are just dead. The 1999 Royal Rumble, which is not a great Rumble anyway, but it had an undercard that featured Gangrel versus X-Pac and the Big Boss Man versus, I don't even remember. And they were just terrible. Or was it Boss Man versus X-Pac? I don't know. A bunch of DX. Or Big Boss versus Road Dogg or something. I can't remember. But that was typical of the undercards at the time. I mean, you had great matches in the main event, but in the undercard it was full of a bunch of garbage. And a part of that was because the roster was thin and WWE was signing anyone with a pulse and putting them out there because they pretty much had to. It got better by 2000, 2001, but there was a long stretch there where the Attitude Era was pretty dire in terms of actual wrestling. And if you compared it to the product today is actually better to watch. And I said stuff about how I don't miss the blatant racism of the gang wars, and I don't miss the rampant misogyny. And I get told, well, that was all the stuff that made the Attitude Era great. I'm like, no, it really wasn't. Steve Austin made the Attitude Era great. And it was, I liked the Attitude Era. I was a teenager during the Attitude Era, and I was all big on the Attitude Era. But looking back at the Attitude Era, compared to the product today, I'll take the main event, but the rest of the card could just never happen as far as I'm concerned. I will take the undercard of modern WWE over the undercard of anything that happened in the Attitude Era, except, at least we'll say pre-2000. 2000, they got it together with like the Tag Division Revival and the Radicals coming in. But from 97 till 2000, Attitude Era was a lot of angles and not a lot of wrestling. Anyway, I don't feel like I have to defend myself. I've done enough of that over the last week, and that's why it's been kind of a rough week for me. I know, don't write on the internet unless you want to be made fun of. But sometimes when people say stuff like, and these are literal quotes. Somebody said that whoever made this list was so stupid I should slit their throats. Things like that. I'm like, guys, disagree with me if you want, but do we need to move to personal threats? Like, shit, I don't know any of you people. Just because I'm wrong, suddenly we have to escalate to violence? Anyway, yes, from the chat, the Global Cruiserweight Series qualifying matches are happening in Evolve and somewhere else that I can't remember the name of. I know, TJ Perkins is one of them. He used to be in TNA. Zack Sabre Jr. is in one of them. I suspect he will win that match. I've been actually hearing good things about what's going on in the NXT. Obviously, with the Talent Void, they've debuted a bunch of stuff on the live shows. A new big guy tag team. Manny Andrade, the former La Sombra, is wrestling out there. I've actually heard decent things about No Way Jose, who will debut on NXT this week. Revolution Pro, yes, that was the name of the other place where there'll be qualifying matches. That's where the Zack Sabre one is happening, I'm pretty sure. Who else? I heard somebody else debuted in NXT, but I can't remember. Not that important. I mean, most of them probably won't make it till TV in the near future anyway. But all in all, it's been a pretty good couple weeks for wrestling. I think we're almost washing the taste of WrestleMania out of our mouths. We got some good stuff going on. We don't know who's in charge of Raw anymore, but we don't really care. Yes, from everything I've heard, I wish they could get Will Ospreay for the Cruiserweight Series. Or also, I wish they could have gotten Ricochet, but he's not available. Will Ospreay apparently might be hurt, torn ligaments in his knee. Don't quote me on that. I'm not entirely sure, but apparently he's the new next big thing on the Indies. I think like the Cruiserweight Series is going to shape up to be pretty good, even with just what's been announced already. I don't know how they'll tie it in the storylines, if there'll be qualifying matches on NXT, whatever they do. But it'll be okay. Is that about it? I think that might be about it. Yeah, that's good. I mean, obviously they're in the UK, so hopefully they'll keep their heads down for the rest of the tour. People won't get fired or injured or anything, so they can come back and we can have this pay-per-view that we've been theory crafting, which actually might be pretty good. I don't know. I should wrap this up because I want to watch Last Week Tonight before I go to sleep because we've all got to work in the morning. Sunday night podcast, bad idea. I actually considered doing Sunday nights after pay-per-views occasionally, but then I realized that I'd be doing a podcast until like 1 in the morning before going to work. Not the best plan in the world, and I'm a bad planner as it is. Yes, for the chat, it was refreshing that Shane just announced matches on Raw without 20-minute promos. Yeah. I mean, really, that's the big thing about Shane being in charge, is that he's doing what I expected he would do because he's got better things to do than cut 20-minute self-serving promos about how horrible a person he is, because he's not. He makes matches. Some of it gets announced by proxy. Some of it gets announced through the announce team. And he just kind of hangs up backstage and shakes people's hands after matches and occasionally gets annoyed at Kevin Owens. And acts like a reasonable person, because when Kevin Owens says, "Oh, I'm going to interfere with Sami Zayn's match," and why would your response not be, "Get the hell out of the arena and here's some security to make sure you go"? It's not that I want Shane actually in charge of Raw. I want somebody like that in charge of Raw who just basically is there to make matches and stay out of the way. Yes, it's a good idea. I didn't try to do that after WrestleMania. I did consider it, but I mean, I was supposed to be watching the Walking Dead finale right after WrestleMania, and I didn't even do that. So there's no way I was doing a podcast after that WrestleMania. It would not have been a happy podcast, let's put it that way. But we're 2 weeks away from that, and things are actually looking up somewhat. Payback is looking like a great pay-per-view. We've already discussed how it looks incredible. So there's reason for optimism. I mean, it's not, everything is not fixed. Everything is not perfect. People are still getting injured at an alarming rate. But there's good things happening. The tag team division is back. The women's division is being treated as legitimate. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are fighting each other. AJ Styles is in the main event of a pay-per-view. Shinsuke Nakamura exists. Things are good. They're not great. They're not spectacular. It's not the Attitude Era all over again. But things are positive for the first time in a while. And damn it if you can't just like that a bit. So I'm going to wrap it up. Just a couple things before we go. I did not take the opportunity last week. Just on a personal note, to congratulate Sean Garmer, who runs the Wrestling to the Max podcast, who runs that network. who's a friend of mine. He's a writer for 411. He got married last week, so congratulations to him. I know he's a good guy, and congratulations to him. I wish I'd said it last week, but I forgot because I'm not a good guy, not the guy either, but I'm just a guy. I want to say, if you happen to be around the internet and you feel the need to denigrate women, could you please stop? Because this is getting out of hand again. That's just my own little thing. And as for other than that, I'll say I hope we enjoy Raw this week. I hope we enjoy SmackDown this week. I hope we enjoy all the wrestling that happens this week, and they continue their hot streak, and things look up for when the podcast comes back this Saturday coming up. It's nice and warm up here in Canada, so it must be nice and warm where you are, because I can't possibly see a scenario where it isn't warm in Canada and warm everywhere else. That's not true, but whatever. So we'll see you next week, Saturday. Follow us on Facebook, TWNE After Dark. Follow me on Twitter at Dave the Camel. You can see my day job at Goliath.com, where I write stuff about wrestling and other things going forward. We're an expanding website. We're getting bigger all the time. So I really appreciate the support. And of course, you can follow this podcast and others on the Wrestling to the Max network. You can access it through Facebook, Wrestling #2 The Max. I'm not sure if they have a website, and I should really ask Sean at some point. I'm sure if you type in the Google, you'll find something. And this podcast is also available on Spreaker.com, ForumMania.com, iTunes, and Stitcher. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. Why wouldn't you do that? We're good for drive-in listening, probably. I don't know. I've never had somebody say we weren't. So we'll see you next week. Thanks everyone in the chat for listening. Thanks for everyone for listening in general. Have a good one. Always be a fan.